So good evening, everyone. Nice to see all of you here in the Zendo and all of you there online. Special welcome to those of you who I don't know. My name is Shinryu, and I want to thank you all for your practice this evening, each and every one of you. I have two questions for you tonight, and the first one is, who do you feel grateful to for your practice? Who do you feel grateful to for your spiritual practice? Who comes to mind when I ask that question? Is there someone in particular or a variety of people? Maybe someone who helped you find your spiritual path in the first place, or someone who helped you along the way, or supported you in a difficult time, or inspired you, whom you learned from. In my own case, when I think about this, I think back to how I first connected with Zen, and it was actually probably my first spiritual connection was through Zen. And I think I must have been around 14 or 15 years old. My mother had died when I was 11, and she had some friends in the alumni organization that she was in on the Monterey Peninsula, and they would every year do a book sale. And so after she died, they were very attentive, the women in this organization, very attentive to our family. And so they named the book sale for my mother, and they created a scholarship to raise money from the sale that would go for a scholarship fund for a student to go to college. And then they named it for my mother. And so my little sister and my father and I would go every year to the book sale. And I remember, I think it must have been 14, 15, I found this one book at the sale that really spoke to me somehow, although I couldn't understand it, but it was very attractive. It was gray and black and white, and on the cover there was a scroll with some Asian calligraphy. And on the backside there was an image of a man with a shaven head, but he was there was a little stubble showing, looked a little grizzled, but he had a wry look on his face, and he looked like, I liked the picture of him. So that was Suzuki Roshi, and that was the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And I carried that book with me always after that. I didn't understand much of it in the beginning, but carried it with me to high school, to college, and I would just flip through it and open it randomly and see what it had to teach me. But I grew up in Northern California, on the Monterey Peninsula. So Suzuki Roshi and the San Francisco Zen Center had a big influence on all of Northern California. And I also grew up at the mouth of Carmel Valley, which is actually very close to the Tassajara Zen Center. And in fact, our family knew the people, the Becks, who sold Tassajara to San Francisco Zen Center. Yeah, you just drive out Carmel Valley Road and then take a right and past the village and go to Jamesburg, and then over the mountain and down the hill to the canyon. We used to go out there to play in the snow when there was snow, but I didn't ever go out there when I was young, not till much later. But nonetheless, Suzuki Roshi, San Francisco Zen somehow had influenced me. And then I went to high school, and I was exploring different things. I had a friend, Michael, and Michael and I gravitated to one of the teachers in the high school. His name was Lloyd Baskerville. He used to previously taught English, but he set up a pottery shop on the outskirts of campus. And that was the place where all of the folks, all the misfits ended up. The kids who couldn't really stand the regular classes, or the rebels, or the folks who just wanted some alternative. And so they'd go there and they'd do ceramics, and they could play whatever music they wanted. They couldn't play at home. Lloyd would let them play their music, hard rock, whatever it was. And then at the end of the day, after they'd all left, he'd turn on Mozart just to clear the air. But we kind of studied with Lloyd. He was like our mentor, and we naturally began reading the French existentialists and Hermann Hesse. This was the 1970s, after all. And another friend, Bell, was also a part of the early exploration for me. And so we were reading Taoist literature that was part of her family, Chinese family background. I knew that Lloyd was a meditator, and but I was kind of curious about that, but kind of afraid to ask him about it. So one day after I was on my way walking home, and I walked past the pottery workshop, and I decided, kind of got my gumption up, and I decided to go back, go into the workshop. And no one else was around, and Lloyd was there, and I said, I think I'd like to learn how to meditate. And he was a short, very intense man, and he had his back to me. He turned around and he stared at me, and he said, do you want to survive? So I went to Lloyd's house, and he took me to his meditation room. He didn't use it for anything other than meditation. And there was a big scroll in there with some calligraphy on it that he said was from a Korean Zen monk who was an old friend of his. And the room had a good feeling to it. And Lloyd showed me the basics of meditation. On the Monterey Peninsula, there wasn't really anywhere to go to study meditation. And I knew that Lloyd said, you can go to the Transcendental Meditation outfit. And I knew that he had done some retreats with them, but he didn't really push that. But he did say to me, someday you'll discover Zen, and it will be an important reference for you, he said. So I started sitting then, and I would just sit on my own. I didn't go to Tassajara. I was kind of allergic to organized religion, so I just did my own thing. My first year in college, I went to Minnesota, to a small little art school, and I took a religion class with a professor named Bardwell Smith. He was a very nice man who always wore a suit and a big bow tie, and there were some really interesting folks in that class. And one day, Bardwell Smith invited a Zen master to our class. And I don't remember anything that he said, but I remember his presence before the class. And he was so composed and so in himself. He seemed like he wasn't leaking in any way. And that impressed me. Something about him impressed me. And later, our class took a trip to Minneapolis, and we we slept overnight, and then sat zazen, and then listened to a Dharma talk from Shinryu Roshi, who's leading the temple there. And then I transferred to Berkeley, and San Francisco Zen Center was nearby, Berkeley Zen Center was nearby, but again, I didn't want to get into organized religion. Maybe I'd heard some of the rumors about crisis or scandal at San Francisco Zen Center, but I just sat on my own. And after a while, I think it was just after I graduated, a friend of a friend told me, oh, there's a sitting group up in the Berkeley Hills. This person actually had been at Zen Center in Los Angeles when Maizumi Roshi was there, but she was also there during all the scandals at ZCLA, and so she had fallen away. And but I got up my gumption and decided to try going to this sitting group, and it was in the Berkeley Hills behind the house owned by Jack and Vicky Shoemaker. And Jack Shoemaker ran the North Point Press, which is a very nice publishing house. I think it's still going. And Vicky, for many years, worked at Black Oak Books. And so there were about a half dozen of us who sat in this little cabin behind their house in the redwoods there. And, you know, even though I didn't go to San Francisco Zen Center, one of the Zen influences in the Bay Area at the time was Gary Snyder. And I'd read a lot of Gary Snyder, and it turned out that Gary Snyder had would spend summers in this cabin when he would come down from the Sierra. And it was a nice group of folks sitting together. A couple of them had also fallen away from Zen practice, but had rakusus. And so we'd sit, and someone would prepare tea and biscuits and leave it on a tray outside the door for after our sitting, and then we'd have tea and chat until the raccoons discovered the biscuits, and then they had to alter our ritual. But one of the things that really impressed me about that experience was I heard for the first time the 4 vows. Sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible, I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless, I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unattainable, I vow to attain it. That really hit me when I heard it. I thought, wow, that is really ambitious. And from the Bay Area, my partner Simi and I went down to Los Angeles, where she was in an MA program. And again, I didn't go near the Zen Center of Los Angeles. Again, maybe I heard rumors. But I kept sitting on my own. And then we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I just kept sitting on my own, didn't go to the local Zen Center. And then we moved to Bolivia. And I was with a friend there one day. I went to his place, and I saw on his sofa, amidst all the other pillows, was a zafu. And I said, oh, I pointed to the zafu. I said, oh, you do this too? He said, yeah. So we started sitting together in the mornings. And then he said, I'm going to bring my teacher over from Madrid. And he had sat with, he was Spanish, Ignacio Ballesteros, and he sat with the Zen Center in Madrid that Paco Dokushu Bialba ran there, along with Mire Pio. And they also had their troubles, and so Mire was looking to relocate. And so she came to Bolivia via San Francisco Zen Center and ZCLA. She met Shinryu Roshi, and then made it down to La Paz, and we started practicing with her, and she really liked it there and said, why don't we start a Zen Center here? So she went back to Madrid to get her belongings, and Ignacio and I created a Zendo. We took an old abandoned storage area, and we put down wood floors and made soji screens and painted the walls and put a roof on it, and created a garden and got a Zen Center. And Mire came back, and we started practicing together. Some people started to join us, old Dharma friends, Marta, Samya Kushin, Hanya Jin showed up, Joko showed up. And Mire was a very important teacher for me, and I think I attribute to her my learning how to do zazen. That was really important for me. And I also did Jukai with her, and from La Paz, I went back to Madison, and I sat with the local Zen group there, which was just a block from my house. They were affiliated with the Rochester Zen Center, and the teacher there was Bowden Colheed sensei at the time. he came out and I did a retreat with him in Madison, another in Chicago, and sat with the folks there in Madison. And I remember the first retreat I did with them, um, late one night after lights were out, I stole down to the Zendo to do a little more sitting. And when I got there, I was surprised to discover in the shadows the Tenzo, the cook. She was the first one who would get up in the morning. She'd be working hard all day in the kitchen, cooking for everyone. And then she was the last person sitting in the Zendo at night. That really inspired me. I thought, wow, that's great practice. And from there, I got a job offer in New York City. So um, I had to find a place to practice in New York City. Came to New York City and I didn't feel like shopping around. So I just sat in my living room for a year until my practice got so dried up and stiff that I realized I finally had to find a Sangha to practice with. So I went to the one that was just 2 blocks away, and that was Village Zendo. It was the original Zendo where Roshi and Joshin had their apartments and their Zendo. First person I met was Joshin. She was taking out the trash. And I met a lot of old timers there, Myoko and Ryotan and Yugetsu and Steve Karakashin and others. But I realized later that it wasn't the first time that I'd met Roshi and Joshin, because when I was in Madison before I went out there, I had this dream in which I was riding a bicycle in a completely burned out inner city neighborhood. And there was no power in the neighborhood. Everything was dark. Couldn't really see. There were people hanging out on the stoops, but their faces were in the shadow. I didn't know where I was. I felt very unsure of myself and didn't know where I was going. And then this battered old blue van drove up and came to a stop in front of me. And these 2 women got out and they threw open the back doors of the van and they took my bicycle and threw it into the back of the van. And they said, "We know where you're going. We'll take you there." And then we headed off, and I saw that we were going into a beautiful city with surrounded by greenery and these waters. And yeah, that was my first introduction to Roshi and Joshin. And I've been following along after them ever since. So those are just a few of the people who were important to me in my spiritual practice, people I'm grateful to, people I'm indebted to. And if I think about it, it's just such a diverse array of people, from my parents to my parents' friends to Suzuki Roshi and the San Francisco Zen Center to my high school teacher, my high school friends, Katagiri Roshi and Gary Snyder, and these people whose names I didn't even know, who I sat with in the Berkeley Hills. And, Mide and Ignacio in La Paz, and the Tenzo in Madison, and Bowden Colheed, and Roshi and Joshin, and all the brothers and sisters, Dharma brothers and sisters here at Village Zendo. So many people, so many different walks of life, so many influences, all of which helped me in different ways, and who I'm grateful to, indebted to. But also, I have to say, it was also Roshi's teachers. It was Bernie and Maizumi Roshi and Maizumi Roshi's father, and all of the ancestors, all the way back to Shakyamuni Buddha. In a way, I'm indebted to all of them as well, and feel gratitude to all of them. So it's really endless. The connections are endless and boundless. My second question for you is, how can you express your gratitude to all the people who've supported you in your practice? How can you repay your debts of kindness to all those people in your own spiritual life? Given the fact that actually the connections are endless, the people involved are innumerable, how can you express your gratitude, and how can you repay, how can you requite all of those debts? So there's one way to go about it that's very simple, is just to practice. Probably all of your spiritual friends and teachers would want that, just that you practice. And actually, just when you practice, just when you drop all of your ideas for a minute and prejudices and attachments, and open up your heart, mind, and are really present for what's going on right now, for example, at Village Zendo or online, you can express your gratitude. Your gratitude is expressed, and your debts are requited. If you do that right now, just be awake. There are actually no longer any debts. And there's no debtor, and there's no one else to pay off. Just by coming to Village Zendo, you can requite your debts. And being online at the Zendo tonight, you can express your gratitude. And I'll say one thing more, and that is, if you do something, if you help someone else in their practice, being of service, coming from your own practice and being of service to others, that is also expressing the gratitude and repaying your debts. And you can do it just in the most ordinary ways, in simple ways, like coming to the Zendo tonight or showing up tonight for Dharma talk. Thank you all for your practice.